Welcome to Nurturing a Linguistically Inclusive Learning Environment. Yay, I've been waiting for this one. I think anytime we can talk about elevating different languages, I'm all about it, and being inclusive is everything. So welcome to today. I am Dr. Desiree Alexander. I'm the founder, CEO of Educator Alexander Consulting, and these are all of the different ways that you can get to me. If you are watching us on the YouTube channel, no, you don't get a certificate, but you do get the knowledge. And right under the video in the description, you will see the resources. So if you're like, wait, I want those resources that she's talking about, you have them. They're right under the video. So what is coming up next? Right now, these are the sessions that we have planned, but we have about 8 more webinars that will be added. So definitely check out that link. If you're like, oh man, I want these and I want so much more, check out that link because there will be more on the website. So next, if you haven't listened to Victoria speak, I don't know if you're living, honestly, you're not living a full life. So we're going to talk about equity in instructional coaching. And I really love that topic because it's something for our educational leaders, our coaches, but it's also for everyone, because you want to come in here like, how can I work with my coach better? Is my coach doing kind of what they should be doing? So love that topic. Then we have Leadership Academy. It's virtual and it's free. Second annual Leadership Academy. Definitely come join us, even though it is hosted by the Louisiana Educators of Color Collective. It is for all educators all around the world. Is going to be lessons specifically for educational leaders and people that want to be educational leaders, anybody that's kind of interested in leading. So come and join us for that. Go ahead and register now. Leveraging YouTube. We talk about YouTube for all of the fun stuff, but how can we leverage it for actual learning? Cannot wait to hear Michelle talk about that. And then ISTE is in New Orleans. What? Come join us at ISTE. It's going to be a ball. First time, live in such a long time. So this is going to be awesome. And Change Global. So many of you across the globe have been with us through at Camp Global and Change Global. Well, now it's going to be different. We have Ed Change Global after dark. And then we have an ECG PD day. So it's no longer 24 hours. We're separating it. We're revamping it. Come join. Now, for this one, if you want to present, get those in because there's only 20 spots this year to present, where we used to have so many spots. So get those in soon. I think they're due May 15th. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's when they're due. So immerse students in AR, VR. And then she has XR. I don't even know what XR is, but it's on there. And I want to learn about it from Rochelle. And Rochelle is coming back and doing some more with like AI and just all kind of like super techie stuff. I'm loving it. And then this is a paid session, but there's only one more left for the fall, for the spring. I'm like, where are we right now? And that's for ELA teachers, 20 best technology tools. It is coming up. And then we have, this is a Everyone Academy from Morocco, and we're doing increasing your ed tech footprint and influence. So if you're like, Desiree, I want to do what you do, come find out how. And that is free. If you go to it, it has a cost if you want a certificate, but if you don't want a certificate, it's completely free. Whoo! I know you're like, Desiree, I love your voice. It's like smooth jazz. I get it, but that's not what you came for. You came to hear Carly. So let's get started.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. I am so excited to be joining you today. Okay, first of all, I have to say, this is like the most beautiful day in the Chicagoland area. So I know a few folks were leaving where they were from in the chat. Like that first day where it's like just mildly nice out. If you are in a colder climate, if you are a person from the northern states, then I know you understand this, right? Like when we first get that nice day, everyone busts out their shorts, everyone opens up all their windows, everyone drives around with their windows down, even if it's like 50 degrees. We're like, yes. So I hope you all can get outside a little bit today. But I'm really, really excited to talk about this. This is like my jam. This is my passion. Today, we're going to talk about nurturing a linguistically inclusive learning environment. Inclusion is a word that has almost become a buzzword in education. And I'm so glad that we're having conversations about it. But when we really want to focus on that language lens, there is so much that we all can do no matter what our role is, no matter how long we have been serving in education, no matter how many languages we speak or don't speak. There are so many things that we can do to promote this linguistically inclusive learning environment for all of the students that we serve. So I am really, really excited to hop in. I want to tell you a little bit about who I am and how I'm entering the space today. I am a mom, first and foremost. I have an 8th grade son and a 4th grade daughter. So if you serve middle schoolers or high schoolers, or you love a middle schooler or high schooler in your life, you know that the biggest thing we talk about, the hot topic at home, is always hoodies, because hoodies are the universal, like unofficial uniform of the American middle schooler. Am I right? They work in 20 below winter days. We don't need a winter coat, Mom. We just need a hoodie. We're all set. But it also works in the dead of summer when it's like 98 degrees outside, right? And we want to make sure we wear like a dark color to really trap that heat. So yeah, as a mom, that's what we talk a lot about. The hoodie is great for everything. I'm also an educator. I have served linguistically diverse students for over 15 years. I was an EL teacher for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade across 60 different language groups. I was also a 3rd grade bilingual classroom teacher in a transitional English-Spanish bilingual program. So much fun. So in this photo, you can see it almost looks like students, but if you zero in a little bit closer, you'll be able to see these are actually scientists. Take a look at the scientists that I was working with on this particular day. We had just read like one of those Newsella articles, a nonfiction science article about the concussion protocol in the NFL. And as I was reading this with my scientific colleagues here, everyone was really, really upset. And we said, who is advocating for these NFL players? Like, this is really damaging to their brains. Who is looking out for them? And so I said, okay, well, what do we do about it? This is a problem that y'all have acknowledged. What do we do about it? And they said, we have to write a letter. So we opened up our chart paper and we all started to draft a letter. We co-constructed this piece of text together and we addressed it to the NFL commissioner. And I know that he's still losing sleep over this letter that he received, because these 3rd grade scientists from the Chicagoland suburbs, we were really on fire that day. We had a lot to say. And that's a great way for us to encourage our students to change the world, right? Using their voice and their words. I am also an animal advocate. So you can see here, people say like, oh, wow, that's so nice that you foster puppies. And I say, yeah, that sounds like I'm a nice person, but I really do it for selfish reasons because, at the end of the day, education is hard. Educating kids is hard. It takes a lot out of you. And so does arguing about hoodies all the time. So at the end of the day, I just love having something small to snuggle with that doesn't argue or doesn't do a pop-in observation at the worst time. So I do that. And then this is the photo I always want to share with folks, because this is really who I am, this girl in the center. I can share my professional headshot with the cheese and the smile, but this is really who I am and I cannot turn her off. So I'm sure my sisters really appreciate this photo that I always share with folks as I work with educators and leaders as we talk about serving our multilingual students. So I want to open with this because this is something that happens in classrooms and in spaces across the US and beyond. So it says this, it says, many times our multilingual learners are forced to serve as interpreters for their families during parent-teacher conferences. Moments later, teachers turn around and call those same students low. So first of all, I want to point this out because this is a gross violation of a student's civil rights, right? Asking them to do this labor of translation, right? It is the school's responsibility to provide interpreters for language access for all of the families that we serve. Okay, but isn't this interesting? Because when we have these moments, we are employing our students' linguistic assets for a reason, right? And then as we do that, through the very act of doing that during the conference, we'll say, oh, this child is low in this child is low in this. Here are all of these different scores. Right, thank you. Dr. Durf is in the chat and she's sharing, right? People who know more than one language are brilliant and talented. Yes, absolutely. And we want to make sure that we are honoring and celebrating and elevating our students' linguistic assets and skills and passions and talents and all of those things, right? They are linguistically gifted individuals, right? And so when we say the word low and we assign that to a child or a human being, that is really, really problematic. And that is one of those phrases in education that we really need to retire. Because numbers can be high and low, but children cannot be, right? So we really want to make sure that we are addressing that. During our time together, this is a QR code. It has the link to all of our resources. All of the linkables that I'm going to share are going to be here for you in this. But please utilize the chat as we go, because the smartest person in the room is the room. We can all learn and grow from each other. So I appreciate when folks are chatting along. And if you are joining us through the recording later on, please use the comment feature in YouTube, or please post online with your thoughts and takeaways and your ideas and resources on this topic as well. I want to point this out too, because this is a phrase that we always publicly declare in education spaces. We value diversity, right? We put things like this in our mission statements for the school or district level. We even put statements like this in our school letterhead or in our email signatures, right? We value diversity. And when educators or leaders or administrators use this phrase, sometimes it makes us feel very comfortable or very noble. Like, yes, this is who I am. This is what we do. This is what we're about. But when we look at the evidence inside of school spaces, what is the evidence that the folks in the school actually do value diversity in every part of our school building, right? So we want to make sure that we're not just saying this as a public declaration, but that we're walking the walk, right? And again, we can easily make these declarations, but when it comes down to it, we should see evidence of this in our school spaces, in the classrooms, in the hallways. We should hear evidence of this in the air of the school as well. When we talk about things like celebrating and elevating diversity, one of the things that is kind of like a go-to or has become a go-to in schools is that one international night that happens in schools across the country. And again, this is a really good thing. It is a great thing to host an international night and to raise awareness of the cultures that we have in front of us and that we serve in our very communities. This is a wonderful thing. But I want to point this out because I want us to look at this a little bit deeper. If we take a look at the graphic here, you're going to see this example of a cultural iceberg diagram. And so when we look at the kind of surface level culture, again, this is not to imply that these pieces of our culture are not important. No. They are very important. Absolutely. Things like our music, visual arts, food, language, festivals, literature, dress, holiday customs, all of those different things make up surface level culture. And again, these are very valuable, very important. But what happens is when we only use the international night in our schools and in our districts as kind of like the compass of saying, okay, did we value diversity this school year? Oh, yes, we did. We had an international night. Check. Yep, we value diversity for the school year. We need to be really cautious that we are not doing that, right? And sometimes, again, for our administrators or our leaders or our decision makers, many times they say, okay, yes, we did value diversity because we hosted a night or we did one read aloud for the school. And so we didn't really dig deeper. So all of these different things are that deeper level of culture, etiquette, notions of beauty, religious beliefs, body language, gender roles, leadership styles. All of these different things are really important for us as educators, leaders, change agents in our spaces to know and understand and continue growing in as we serve the families in our communities. And this is a question too, does the diversity of our students and families that we serve match the diversity of our staff? If we looked at national statistics, we would find that this is not the case. And again, for an educator like me, who I identify as I am a white educator. You could see my blonde hair. I grew up monolingual. It is really important for me to unpack and continue learning and growing in my own biases and the things that I once believed. And I need to continue to push myself and ask for others to hold me accountable as I grow, because my appearance and my upbringing is different than the families that I serve. So I really need to make sure that I'm continuing in this journey of discovery and reflection and growth, and action comes behind that growth, right? So I have two phrases here. The first one people feel pretty comfortable with, and people tend to agree. What we say to kids matters. And when I say kids, I mean every child in our space, whether they are 3 years old or 18 years old, right? Kids in all ages. What we say to kids matters. People tend to say, yeah, I agree with you, Carly. But what about this? What we say about kids matters too. Sometimes that makes people feel a little bit uncomfortable, because like when kids are not in the room, what are we saying about them? So friends, we need to have this conversation in our schools. It is really, really important. So you might say, okay, well, how do we begin this conversation? And I'm going to say this, an all staff meeting is not the time or place for this conversation. And here's a reason why. You know, at the end of the day, right, after working all day, we are exhausted. Our to-do list is like 3 miles long. We have Post-its all over our laptops and notebooks and agendas of all the things that we have to do, right? So when I come into an all-staff meeting at the end of the day, I know that I'm going to be multitasking just a little bit, right? We are the royalty of multitasking. It's what we have to do to survive. So I'm going to tell you, it's really important that we do not bring this up at an all-staff meeting, because we need a really active, captivated audience, a smaller audience, to kind of start this conversation and have that chain effect that we really need to have. So I'm going to offer this 2 kind of moments to target in your school space. These are spaces, again, these are moments that occur all school year long. One is called a problem solving meeting. Maybe your district calls it a student data meeting, but this basically means when you come around the table, maybe a few educators expressed a specific concern about a specific student. And so you have a few different roles that come together and you say, okay, these are the things that we're concerned about. You know, here's what we know about the student. Here's what we've tried so far. What else can we do to better serve the child? So that is one moment that you might want to target to have this conversation. The other moment is when you are coming together as a small group, or perhaps a committee or a subcommittee, to plan for a family event that is coming up in your school building or your district. Those are 2 moments to target. And again, when we have folks around the table for a specific student in mind, now when I have this conversation with teachers, it becomes very real, because when we close our eyes, we can all picture this child's face. That we're not just talking about hypothetical conversations, we're talking about a real conversation we're about to have about a kid that we all love and serve. So I would really encourage you to target one of these 2 moments, or both of these moments. And I'll also add this, because sometimes when we start to have conversations about language norms and establishing language norms in our spaces, our administrators might say, you know what, we can't take this on right now. We have too many initiatives. And you're going to say, you know what, don't worry about it. This is not an initiative. No. This is going to tie in perfectly with our norms for collaboration, because most schools, most teams already have something like this kind of set up, right? As you begin meetings, all staff meetings, small group meetings, you'll normally kind of talk through some norms for collaboration. One of them is like, we'll begin and end on time, right? Like that's a really common one. And so the framework for this conversation is really, really thoughtful and intentional. It is proactive because it's catching language before it happens. It is based on your setting, your specific setting. So this can be adjusted to tweak, for you to tweak to meet the needs of your school. It is a reframing opportunity, a way for us to kind of have conversations to flip our thinking a little bit and change our perspectives and our language specifically. You have a captive audience of a smaller group of educators, and there's an element of group accountability. Okay, so how do we start? Well, okay, so let's imagine, right? We're coming together, we're all getting ready to have a conversation about a specific student, and we're concerned about maybe an SEL challenge that the student has, or maybe we're concerned about a specific reading level, whatever the case may be. team. We have a small group of educators. Maybe there's a leader there, like maybe a coach or a principal. Maybe there's a school psychologist. Maybe there's a social worker, perhaps a reading interventionist, maybe an EL teacher, maybe a special educator. Is there a few classroom teachers or content area teachers? So this is what you're going to say, something kind of like this. Okay, here's what you're going to say. Everyone's there. Thank you for coming today. We're here to talk about Carly and all the ways to support her. And in order to remember all of the gifts this student possesses and to really ground ourselves in inclusive conversations that celebrate what our kids are capable of, here are some sentence starters that we might want to carefully consider. You have maybe heard some of these things in the hallway or in informal conversations around the building. We have to remember that as instructional leaders, and yes, every educator is an instructional leader, that our language choices matter. And so you'll see on each page 2 sentence starters or statements. One is crossed off and the other is not. And the first represents a deficit lens. The second represents an asset-based lens. Let's try to utilize our asset-based starters and statements during this meeting today. Please help each other stick to these, myself included. Okay, so that's kind of like a little script. And again, you don't have to write this down. You don't have to memorize it. This is how you might kind of set the table for your colleagues. So here's the little prep work that you have to do prior to beginning this, right? Number one, you have to identify your statements. What are the statements that are problematic that you are overhearing in your setting? So again, as somebody who has served multilingual learners for so long, there are so many things, words, phrases, statements that need to be retired and need to kind of be called out. One of those is the example you see on the screen. They're low in both languages. How many times have you heard somebody say that about a student? No, we need to retire that, because that's not the case, right? We cannot say that a child is low. Instead, let's actually capture what is happening here. They're developing in both languages. This is incredible, right? We want to make sure that that language is captured appropriately and that we're painting a real picture of the child in front of us, right? So we need to identify the problematic statements, and then we need to offer an alternative. Instead of this language, what do we want to hear? What is a word, phrase, or statement that a 2022 educator should be saying that captures, again, all of the gifts and assets and skills that our students have? And then here's number 3. Number 3 is you have to print these out. I love like the Astro Brights, the neon packs. I'm all about bright colors. And as I've talked with educators who have done this, they've even done things like laminate these. But again, you want to give them a sense of permanence. I even had one school district do this, and they framed all of these posters that they printed out. They framed them, right? We want to give them a sense of permanence in our spaces. So, and again, this is really important. We need to model the learning, right? We don't get to abdicate responsibility just because we're the one bringing it up. We have to be really active in modeling this kind of reflective language practice amongst our teammates and colleagues. It's really important. And we might have to have something in our back pocket that says like, can you help me frame my thinking? I'm trying to say this, but I don't want to say this because that's not what I believe about this child. Help me with my language choices, and ask your teammates to help give you some language. And again, this is a really good community practice for us to have reflective language use. So let's kind of talk about some of these things here. Some of these things that we see in our schools. This is that one example. They're low in both languages. This is something that we hear a lot in dual language or bilingual programs that we really need to retire. Instead of they're low in both languages, no, children can't be low in anything. They're growing in 2 languages simultaneously. That is really, really important that we are reflecting this growth mindset of language development. This is another one that's super, super easy. And again, when we have those student data meetings, sometimes we tend to make 2 lists at those meetings. We make a list of all the things the student can't do yet, and then we make another list of all the things that one teacher on the team has to do to like fix. And of course, I put that in air quotes, right? To fix the child. No. We are not fixing our children. They are not broken. They already have so much that they're coming to us with. We need to elevate. We need to take wherever they are and build up, right? So again, let's start with all of the things that students can do. This is something that we often overhear when we're talking about students who are reaching like fourth grade level and up, right? All the way up to high school or higher ed. Sometimes we'd say things and we say like, oh, she's not motivated. This is really problematic because take a look at that period there. She is not motivated, period. Wow. Not only, this is really problematic because we are assigning this almost like as a character trait. She is not motivated as a human being, period. That's really problematic. Let's disrupt this language. Instead, let's identify what is she not motivated by? Now, again, for me, I'm not motivated by incentive charts or stickers. That's me personally. I'm motivated by words of praise. I'm motivated by lots of other things. So again, we need to say, okay, these are the things that are not motivating to her or to him or to them. Instead, how can we empower her and encourage her? What are her passions outside of school? When she is at home and she's scrolling on her phone or on her tablet, what are the things that she is consuming? What are the things that light her up so that we can take it from like, let's like motivate her. No. Let's bring in all of her passions and talents and skills and all the things that she is excited about so that when she comes into the schoolhouse, she is like ready. She feels like she is on fire. She feels like all of her things are there for her, right? She has that platform and that ability to shine. So again, instead of saying she's not motivated, period, as a characteristic, let's move beyond that and say, okay, how are we empowering her? Not just motivating her, but empowering her. And again, let's take some ownership there. What are the things that we're doing as educators, as leaders, as a school that are really not empowering practices? What can we disrupt in our practices? This next one is interesting because again, as we talk about language growth and language development, sometimes we are wanting to share like a language profile of a particular student, right? And sometimes when we're at a meeting, we'll share some background knowledge about particular students, like this statement here. He was born here. Okay, cool. That is good information, right? That kind of helps us to identify, just the background of the student. That's great. But I want us to be really careful and intentional when we're listening and we overhear this statement. Is this statement being uttered out of frustration or out of a misconception that just because a student was born here in the US or here in the Chicagoland area, that they are supposed to have, again, air quotes here, they are supposed to have a certain level of English proficiency by a certain age. We need to disrupt those misconceptions and misunderstandings that float around our schools. Just because a student was born in the US does not guarantee, right? There's nothing that happens in utero, right? That like babies born in a US hospital are just automatically gifted with English proficiency. No. No. And so when we hear this phrase, again, maybe we're just overhearing it as like giving background knowledge about a particular student and helping us understand their language profile, perhaps. Or is it being said out of frustration or out of a misconception of language development? Okay, so instead we can kind of shift and guide that conversation instead to, in what ways can we support language development for this particular student based on where they are now? Again, all of their assets and skills, how are we incorporating heritage language into our instruction, all of those different things, right? Okay, so those were a couple examples for the students that we serve. Now let's talk about the families that we serve, all families that we serve. How many times have you been at the copy machine or in the teacher's lounge or on bus duty or in a student data meeting where somebody has said this? The parents are not involved. This is one of the most problematic statements that we can share about families. And there's a million reasons why this is really problematic. If I were to ask any educator or any non-educator for that matter, what does it mean to you to be an involved parent? Everybody would have a different definition based on their own upbringing, their own experiences, their own expectations, right? Everybody would have a different definition. And if you were to say, okay, well, what are some specific actions of an involved parent? People might say something like, oh, If they come to the parent-teacher conference, that's an involved parent. That's interesting. So if we are assigning that much value to one event in our school, that happens like this one snapshot moment all school year long, and we're assigning that much value to it, wow, we need to do some unpacking there. And again, all of the statements that we share and all of the things that we are putting out into the air of our spaces in our schools, even if kids are not around and we're just talking to our colleagues and teammates, sometimes that kind of illuminates some of the problematic biases that we hold against the very kids and families that we serve. And if we are going unchecked in our language choices for years and years, and we're just passing down these language choices from generation of teacher to generation of teacher, we need to act now and do some disrupting of the language choices. And I'll always share this example. One of my sisters moved to Denver a few years ago from the Chicagoland area. She didn't know anybody. Her husband got a new job. They didn't have any connections, no family members, no friends there at all. So she gets her kids, 4 kids, registered for school, all good. They're ready to start. And then they get an invitation in the email, in English, of course. And she's English speaking and she checks her email often. So she got the message, okay? And it said something like this: oh, we're having a curriculum night. Please come to the school to learn about 2nd grade curriculum and 6th grade curriculum and kindergarten curriculum and all the ages of her kids. And then it said, please do not bring your kids. This is a parent-only event. Okay. So when we have parent-only events, we are actually disinviting any family that does not have access to childcare. Or we are also disinviting families who don't have access to transportation. When we only send an invitation in English through email, we are actually disinviting all of the families that don't check their email regularly. We are disinviting any family without literacy skills in English. And we are disinviting any family, again, without Wi-Fi or computer access. So when we say statements like, oh, they're not involved because they didn't come to the parent-teacher conference. No. It's actually us. We, as the school, are not involved in actively serving the families, right? It's on us. We need to flip that. And again, these are other statements that I have heard over the years that are super problematic. Oh, those parents don't care. Those parents don't do this. And it's interesting. Look at the language choices here. It's really subtle, but it really is. It has a big impact. The parents, right? Instead of the parents, those parents. When I use the word those, I am trying to create like physical, actual distance between myself and the families. Those parents over there, those parents don't care. Those parents are not involved, right? So we need to be really mindful and intentional with our language. Let's do some simple shifts here. Instead of those parents, maybe we say our parents. But when I say our parents, I'm always thinking of like my own mom and dad. So maybe I want to shift this language, right? The word families I find is more inclusive because, again, families come in all shapes and sizes. It's not always a biological parent or an adoptive parent. Sometimes it's a caregiver. Sometimes it's an additional family member or a family friend. Or again, it's somebody who is a legal guardian. So the families, I like to say families instead of parents, the families that we serve. It puts the families first and it shows our relation to them. We are here to serve them. When we say things like parent involvement, it almost sounds like a one-way street. I like family engagement more. When we think of like an engagement ring, that implies a relationship, right? There is a two or more parties in that. That implies a relationship. There is a responsibility from the school and all the school staff and the family, right? How are we engaging with each other? That reciprocal relationship has to be there. So what are you hearing? What are the statements in your school that you're hearing about students or families, or again, outside of students and families? What's happening in your community? Our students and families are constantly under attack in terms of like linguistic oppression. People get really irate, and you see examples of this on social media of people who are very upset when people hear a heritage language being spoken in the grocery store and people are followed out to the parking lot. And if kids and families are experiencing that in our communities, it is really critical that in our schools, we are nurturing and maintaining and reflecting ways to continuously grow a linguistically nurturing and linguistically inclusive environment. So we need to be active listeners, right, in our spaces. What are the problematic statements in your setting? If you scan this QR code here, this is going to open up to a document that kind of looks like this. This is just a little place for you to start. It kind of looks like a Google Slides presentation, and it has a few different examples of places that you might start. But I want you to take this, go to File, make a copy of it, and you can design your own language norms that make sense to your space based on what you are hearing. So again, I included a lot of those examples that I included in this presentation, but please, again, change these up to reflect what's happening in your space. So that is just one place for you to start. And then during those meetings, again, you really need to be mindful of time and making sure that you have enough time in your meeting to check your progress. So, like at the end of a teacher meeting, right, we're all just flying out the door. The bell rings, we ran out of time. We are going to send like 18 follow-up emails to continue this conversation. Like we all do that. We all slam our laptops closed and we run to pick up kids from wherever we need to be, right? It's so important. So if the meeting ends at 11:30, set your phone timer for 11:25 because you need to have this conversation too. Check the progress. Say, how did we do? Did our language choices help us to be more proactive when we were talking about this student today? What are our noticings? And again, you might have to have something ready, like in your back pocket. You might say something like, friends, thank you so much. When I was struggling with this, you really helped me, or you pointed to that poster over there to help me reframe my thinking. So thank you for holding me accountable. You might have to have something like that in your back pocket so that you can model the learning and that reflective language practice. But this is so, so important. This is the moment, again, where we can start to have those conversations that bring about change. And then I'll always share this too. This is like my little tip. You know how we said we printed them out, we gave them a sense of permanence, maybe we laminated those statements, whatever the case may be. I want you to accidentally, on purpose, leave them there, especially if you are serving in a district or a school that has like a designated teacher conference room that students don't come into. Accidentally, on purpose, leave the statements there and say, oh, I gotta go. And then the next group of educators and leaders that come in and have a conversation about a different child is going to be looking at all of these statements and saying, what's this about? I say this phrase all the time. And again, maybe they're not a part of that one conversation, but you're planting a seed for other educators in your space as they serve students, okay? So again, that's just super, super important. And I'll also say this, it's not about us policing each other's language. It's about supporting each other in our journeys. Because again, we all have different backgrounds and experiences, and we're all on different places in our journeys. And again, it's inviting a conversation about language choices, about the kids that we serve. And kind of maybe unpacking some of our biases or some of the unchecked language that exists in our spaces. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. This is a really fun activity that you can do no matter what your role is, no matter which students you have, no matter how long you've been in education. This is an activity that you all can do. So this is, I call it the hashtag Love Our Languages campaign. Okay, and I started this in my district a few years ago. And here's what it is. It's a 3-step process. The first step is acknowledging, learning, and recognizing the languages that are there inside of our classroom communities. And that's it. That's just step one. So again, if you are teaching 2nd grade, you're going to gather all your little ones on the carpet and have a conversation. If you are teaching 12th grade consumer sciences, you are going to pick one of the classes you serve, or maybe all your classes. You're going to say, hey, you know what? I wanted to check in with you guys. What languages do we have here in this space? This is a great conversation piece. I've had social workers use this with friendship groups. So just 4 kids around a table use this. I also had a librarian, school librarian, did this with an entire 8th grade, And she did it like classroom by classroom as the students came in. So again, this is just a conversation. Okay, what languages do we have in the room? Does anyone speak another language? And you might have a kid, oh, well, I speak English at school, but I speak Korean at home. Yes, great, let's add Korean. And then you write it down on a piece of paper or a poster, or you invite the kids to write it down. Korean, great. What other languages do we have here? Oh, well, I speak Spanish when I'm with my abuelo. Okay, great. Let's write Spanish on our poster. What other languages do we have? Well, at home, I can only speak English, but I know that my grandma and my grandpa, they speak Tagalog. I don't always understand all of the words, but that's a language that's in my family. Great, let's write Tagalog on our document here or on our poster. And then you gather up all the languages. And then at the end, you say, wow, in room 9, we've got 14 different languages. How cool is that? And then you take that poster and you hang it up outside of your classroom door. And then again, when other folks in the building are walking by, they're going to say, wow, 14 languages inside this classroom. That's really, really cool. And now other teachers who serve your kids are going to say, wow, I wonder how I can invite some of those languages into my space when I see those kids. Or you might have other kids or other classrooms say, oh, we should do that too. And so this started really small. And then sooner or later, right, every teacher in a specific hallway all had that poster outside. And then the kids were hanging out and saying, oh, who speaks, Ukrainian in this classroom? Because there's someone 2 doors down that also speaks Ukrainian. How cool is that? And then again, it starts to lead to really good conversation amongst the kids and amongst the teachers. Okay. And then it gets even cooler. Because now that as teachers, now that we know this about our kids, now we can invite and incorporate heritage language into our spaces. We might start to include some multilingual word walls. We can incorporate like Google Translate. No, it's not perfect. No, it's absolutely not perfect. But now that I know the languages that are here in my space, now I can actively invite them in, right? And make sure I'm really, really intentional. And then step 3 is engaging the folks in front of me, engaging the colleagues and teammates that I have, but also engaging the community. And I'll always share this example. The next time that we had a parent or family event, I think it was like a literacy night or something, I was in the hallway, I had my Hablo Español button, and I was just visible in the hallway for families so that if they had a question and they spoke Spanish, they knew that they can come to me because I had that button very loud, like bright and big and visible. And so I'm standing at like a little station outside in the hallway, and I watched a son and a father come out of a classroom, and he sees the poster and he leans in and he looks for it. He's like, good son. I was hoping you would say Lithuanian. I'm glad that you said it. I'm glad that it's here on this poster. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, I'm glad I got to see that happen. And then, so they're walking down the hallway. It's a fourth grade hallway. They're walking down the hallway, and then all of a sudden the dad stops, like just dead full stop outside of somebody else's classroom. And he leans in, and you can see his eyes kind of get wider, and he's like, wait a minute, hey, and he grabs his son, and he's like, who speaks Lithuanian in this classroom? And the kid's like, I don't know, Dad, I have no idea. He goes, oh my gosh, nobody in this community speaks Lithuanian. You have to find out who in this classroom speaks Lithuanian. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Somebody else speaks Lithuanian here in this school. We have to get to know them. It was the coolest moment. That dad lit up. And now this dad has this excitement and this energy around his language and his community, right? Really, really cool moment. And then the other story I'm going to share about this is anytime you have like a guest speaker in your space, right? Sometimes we have like officer friendly or a guest author comes in. For every guest speaker you have, make sure you also include a multilingual guest speaker. Okay, so when you have that author visit, make sure you also, or instead of, have a multilingual author, because there's a million out there. Make sure you're inviting them in. And then so as I served, that picture that you saw earlier of the 3rd grade scientist that I worked with, the 3rd graders that I served were really, really intentional and mindful about language and language development and how language opens doors for us, right? We were in a bilingual program, so we promoted multilingualism all day, every day. And so we had, just like that, every year, how we have that officer friendly visit. So we had our officer friendly visit, and he's, at the end, there's like, oh, do you guys have any questions? And the kids all raise their hand. What languages do you speak? And he goes, well, I only speak English. They're like, interesting. Well, that's okay. No one's perfect. So if you could speak another language, what language would you choose? He goes, well, Mongolian would be a really good, helpful language because we have a really big Mongolian speaking community. We also have a really large Spanish speaking community. So that would be a cool language for me to know. And they're like, interesting. You should probably take some courses. That'd be really good for you. And he's like, okay. Getting schooled by all these 3rd graders, right? It's so cool. And then they ask questions like, so if you were multilingual, how would that help you in your job? How would that help you better serve your community? all these things, right? Great, great questions. So we continued to kind of follow up with the officer. We exchanged emails, and anytime we had a question about something, we would always email. That became our go-to officer. We're like, okay, let's have this relationship. How do you use STEM in your work? All these different things all year long. So it was really, really cool. By the time we got to like December is a very popular month for many different holidays around the world. Right? And we want to make sure that we are decentering Christmas in our schools. That's really, really important. So anyway, so we all of a sudden, it was early December, we get this email from this officer, and he goes, Mrs. Spina's class, I just wanted to share this with you. You are the first to see this because you are the inspiration for this video I'm about to share. Every year on social media, we post like a holiday video, and we get all the officers involved and everyone in the department involved, and we share a video and we put it online. This year, you are our inspiration. And so we polled our department, everyone from dispatch center to our custodial staff, to our secretarial staff, to officers. And we said, what languages do you know? And we made our holiday video inclusive of all the languages that we have. And did you know we have 33 languages in our department? So this is dedicated to you. And I'm reading this and I'm like, I have tears practically like running down my face. And I show the video, we're all watching it at the same time. They have all these different languages. They have Mongolian, they have Polish, Russian, all these languages saying happy holidays or something like that. They even had sign language. It was such a cool moment. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like all these 8 and 9-year-olds that are in front of me. I'm like, y'all were the inspiration. You guys all inspired this entire police department. And now, not only, it doesn't stop there, because now they post this on our social media feeds, right? And it goes out to the entire community. So now the entire community sees our linguistic diversity, and they're celebrating it, and they're elevating it as something to be proud of. And kids, you were the inspiration for this. You are inspiring our community. Isn't that insane? It's so cool. So this is a really great way to start having conversations with folks in our schools to elevate our languages. And this is something I'll also share. Sometimes when we have students submit like a writing sample or whatever, anything at all. When we see this is an image I pulled from Google, and it says curved yellow fruit. And teachers, like our brains are like wired to find things to teach, right? Like we're going to say, okay, what can I use from this? That's a teachable moment. And so sometimes though, we have to pause our brains, because in our rush to say like, oh, I can use this for instruction, we have to pause and say, wait. Before I need to intervene here, before I need to instruct, let me collect and celebrate what the students have already supplied. Because when I see curved yellow fruit here, 40 cents, many times our brains will go to this. Oh, they don't know the word banana. Oh, they don't know that. Oh my goodness, they're so deficient in vocabulary. No. Take a look at what this student or what this author did do. This author knows that this is a fruit. This author knows it is a curved yellow fruit. This author knows that in English, we put the adjectives before the noun, curved yellow fruit. Take a look at what this author also did. They know that in English, we have rules about our adjectives and the order of the adjectives that come before the noun, right? Curved comes before yellow. I can't say yellow curved fruit because it doesn't sound as good. Take a look at that word curved. They took that word, right? Normally in English, we see the ed ending and we're like, oh, it's a verb. It's a past tense verb. But no, this author knows that sometimes we use that ed ending as an adjective to describe something else. So they took the word. They didn't say curvy. They didn't say curvy yellow fruit. They could have said that. That would have made sense. But they said curved yellow fruit. And then they told me how much it is. So this author knows what a banana is. Absolutely. They have all these descriptors about what a banana is and the characteristics of a banana. And who knows, if we were to flip this sign over, maybe they have the word banana in 18 different languages. We don't know. We're not there. But again, we need to retrain our brains and pause to celebrate all of the good things that our students are supplying. And I'll always share this example of a student who says like, oh, I was brooming the mess. A student wrote that down in a reflection, something that they were doing over the weekend. They spilled a bowl of Cheerios. There was a mess of Cheerios all over the floor. So they grabbed the broom. They said, I was brooming the mess of Spina. And again, my brain is like, oh no, they don't know where the word sweeping. No. Carly, slow down, take a look. They took the word broom and they verbed it because they know in English, sometimes we can do that. They verbed it. So I want to take that word choice that they made and I want to give it a hug and say, yes, You did. You were brooming the mess. You were absolutely brooming the mess. They know that they took that object. They know what it's for. They know how to use it. And they know that you can do it to something else. I was brooming the mess. So again, I want to take it and snuggle with it for a minute. I can also supply them with the word sweeping, right? You were brooming the mess. You were sweeping the mess. That's so cool. I love the way you said that. So good. A student once told me, oh, Mrs. Spina, I'm so bad at vocabulations. I'm sorry, what? You are fantastic at vocabulations. You know how we always shorten, like, oh, it's time for vocab. Well, when we always shorten it, right? Sometimes the kids are like, well, how does that word actually end? And they know in English, we have a lot of shun endings for nouns, right? And so a student might say, oh, vocabulations. Great, try it out. Let's create that linguistically safe space to make mistakes. We're not gonna be like, no, that's wrong. It's not vocabulations, it's vocabulary. No, let's take that word choice and give it a hug and say, yes, it is time for vocabulations. And friend, you are not bad at vocabulations because look at that linguistic creativity that you just demonstrated. You're playing with some different endings and seeing what sticks. I love that. Let's celebrate that. We can always check our bookshelves and take inventory and take action. This is a QR code that'll take you to socialjusticebooks.org. A lot of great things are happening in children's publishing right now. And we are doing a lot of really good things about making sure that we have windows that represent like those mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. That's excellent. But we also want to be mindful of any bias in those books. And socialjusticebooks.org is a great resource. So when you're going through and you're trying to see, okay, what books can I add to our school library or classroom library, they have like a green light, red light, yellow light system. So again, just because it has a different lens in the book, make sure it's not presenting any implicit bias in the book or in the narrative. So that is a great resource to kind of double check. So if you have a new title, type it into the search bar, see what they say about the book. If they give it a green light, go for it. This is a great tool for you to use inside your learning space for you. So if you're a classroom teacher, if you're a content teacher, if you're a social worker, if you are a school librarian, whatever the case may be, this is an inventory that will take you to a resource that looks like this. And this is meant to be a reflection tool for teachers. It gives you a space to create like the dates. It gives you some like classroom data questions. Well, other than English, what are the top languages in your represented by the students that you serve? And then it's going to ask you to do an inventory of all the things that are there on your walls. What do you have? Do you have announcements and flyers? Do you have student work? Do you have student club posters, instructional posters? What do you have? And then it's going to ask you, follow all the directions. It's going to ask you to highlight the items that are also in an additional language other than English. 9 times out of 10, we don't have a whole lot of multilingual resources. So then it takes you through some reflection questions and some possible potential action steps for you. This is really important here. It gives you a date to revisit your inventory to check your progress. So I always do this and I'll say, okay, 4 to 6 weeks from now, I'm going to enter it into my Google Calendar so that I get an alert. And I'm going to do this inventory again and check my progress. So this is a classroom tool. I also have this tool for schools to reflect on the school environment. And we are running out of time, so I'm going to go super quick through this. This would be a really powerful thing to do with a teacher leadership group or a committee. This would also be a really good thing for a student leadership group to do. Take the kids, give them all clipboards and have them walk around the school and look for linguistic representation on the walls of common areas like your cafeteria, your hallways, the front office of the school, right? All of those common areas, and have the students do this reflection inventory. So have them share the data also. When they're done collecting the data, have them share it. And then they might say, okay, here are some reflection questions for us. And again, a potential action plan. Here are some thoughts you might try or do. And there's also a space for you to create your own action items. And then again, you want to establish a date to revisit the inventory to check progress of the school. Maybe you have a different teacher leadership group. Do it the second time. Maybe you have a different student leadership group, do it the second time. But this is a great thing to do. I always say this, invite your board members into your spaces to do activities like this. They are always eager to be in schools and classrooms. And as teachers, we don't always know what to do with them or like what to have them come in and do. Have them do this. because this will elevate their understanding and their awareness of the linguistic diversity in our spaces. It's so important for them to know, because when it's time for budgets and all of those things, and they're saying, how do we use our monies? They're going to say, wow, we have very little linguistic representation on our walls. How can we change this? Okay. And I'll also say this, friends, please invest in growing your network. You deserve a system of support in this work. There are no small wins in education. My friend Dorina Sackman-Ebuash, she always says, incremental is monumental. Isn't that genius? I love her. So she always says that, and we have to really acknowledge and celebrate those small shifts in language choice and language representation, because they are small shifts with big impact, friends. My final thoughts for you as we kind of close out this session today: growth is messy. It just is, but lean into it anyway. Lean into the mess, lean into the growth. Embrace your space as a change agent. No matter how long you've been in your setting, in your school, no matter how many years experience you have, you are a change agent. Trust your students, love them hard, celebrate them, empower them, remind them of their power. Lift them up, lift up their families. They need you. And friends, we need each other. I hope that we can stay connected. You can find me on Twitter at Mrs. Spina's class. You can also email me anytime. I love chatting about this stuff. I'd love to hear about how you are using these resources and all of those things. I'll also mention I have a book called Moving Beyond for Multilingual Learners. It's available on Amazon and other retailers. Barnes & Noble also has it. So you can check that out. There's a few other ideas that kind of go along with this throughout the book. Lots of QR resources linked in the book as well. So thank you so much for your time today. And yes, if you have any questions or anything, you'd like to use the mic or leave it in the chat, please do so.
That was so not just amazing, but it was energizing. And I just saw so many benefits of this message. It really is something that everyone needs, even if, I've heard teachers say, well, all of my students are, speak English. They all speak the same language. And I was just thinking back to when I was in the classroom, like, I didn't know, I didn't know if any of my students spoke different languages. I just assumed. I assumed because they were all speaking English that they spoke English. And man, what missed opportunities, that I was thinking back to certain students. I'm like, man, we could have, just missed opportunities to really dig deeper into the culture of your students and just learning who they are, getting beyond the surface level of who they are and actually learning. So I can't thank you enough for this class. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.